Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us at this regular meeting of the Madera City Council and a special meeting of the Madera City Council as the successor agency to the former redevelopment agency. Today is Wednesday, August 19th, 6 p.m., and this meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. The City Council meeting will be live streamed on the city's website. Members of the public may participate remotely through an electronic meeting in the following ways: via phone by dialing 669-900-9128, and the identification number is 926-6206-5347. The password 999902. Comments will also be accepted at the City Council public comment at madera.gov. With that, I will ask our city clerk to call roll, please.
Mayor Magellan,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember Gallegos,
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Here.
Councilmember Montes,
Here.
Councilmember Robinson,
Present.
and Councilmember Hawley. He had mentioned he was going to be out this meeting at the last meeting.
Yes, thank you very much, Alicia. We will start this evening with our invocation. I believe we have with us this evening from Central Valley Church, Pastor Josh Blair. Is Pastor Blair with us?
I do not believe he is, Mayor.
I don't see him as one of the panelists or attendees, and so I will ask Councilman Robinson if he would not mind leading us in the invocation. If you're able to stand, please do so, and then after the invocation, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Robinson.
Let us bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we come before you, seeking wisdom to lead your people, Lord, to make this city a special city, and a well-functioning city. Lord, we pray, Lord, for our councilman who's in mourning right now for the passing of his wife. Lord, we pray that you bless this city, bless this state, and bless our country. And we give you the glory forevermore because you're worthy. You and me, thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Now, if you'll remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance,
To
the flag
the flag,
United States
of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Joseph, for that beautiful flag. Moving into the approval of the agenda, before we have the late distribution announcement, I will ask on the consent calendar, we have item B3 to be removed until the next regular meeting. And then the late distribution announcement will be in regards to item B9 and item D3. So before we read that, I will ask my colleagues if there's any other changes or additions to this evening's agenda. Seeing none, I will ask our city clerk to read the late distribution announcement, please.
Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, members of the public are advised that less than 72 hours prior to this evening's meeting, items B9 and D3 were distributed to the council after the agenda packet was finalized. Members of the public wishing to view or obtain a copy of these items may do so by visiting the City of Madera meeting and agenda page located on our website.
Thank you, Alicia. With that, I will ask council to approve the agenda with said changes.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the agenda with the changes.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Rodriguez and seconded by Councilwoman Gallegos to approve the agenda with said changes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 That motion carries 6-0 with Councilman Hawley being absent. Thank you, everybody, For that, moving on to public comment, the first 15 minutes are reserved for members of the public to address the council which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked but are not required to identify themselves and state the subject of their comments. If a subject is an item on the agenda, the mayor has the option of asking to hold the item until it is called. Comments on items listed as a public hearing should be held until the hearing is opened. The council is prohibited by law from taking any actions on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the council does not respond to public comment at this time. I will first ask our city clerk if we've received any public comment via email or otherwise.
No, Mayor, none received.
Seeing none, hearing none, I'll close that portion of public comment, and we will move into presentations this evening. As usual, we want to welcome Sarah Boss, who gives us a wonderful and very informative update on COVID-19. Ms. Boss, good to see you again.
Unmute there. Good evening. Thanks for having me. We look like we are now on the opposite side of the CalReady glitch that happened at the state level. And so CalReady, if you're not familiar, is the system used throughout the state for reporting communicable disease. And there was a glitch in that system in which labs that were reporting tests were not getting imported into CalReady. And so therefore, county local health departments, including Madera, were not receiving reports of many tests. So over the last week, we have seen an increased number of tests being reported. And that is basically by report date. So we release cases by when they're reported to us. When we look at the cases by episode date or when they were tested, we can see that they were actually much more spread out. And so the high case counts that we're seeing at this point for the 14-day cumulative case count is not actually reflective of what the true average is. We believe when we look at episode date and we kind of distribute it out, where we're actually at is reflected in today's case count. Today we had 40 new cases, and we expect that over the next weeks we will see that or perhaps a decline in number of cases. And so we will learn more about where we're actually at in the next couple of weeks. Unfortunately, that glitch in CalReady, and I have to say CalReady as a system is, it is old, but more importantly, it was built for a normal volume of reported cases, which in no way compares to the number of cases reported for COVID. None of our systems at the state level, national level, local level were built for this kind of volume. And so upgrades in our systems will enable us to be able to handle any future events. But unfortunately, we do see these kinds of glitches in our data. And we appreciate people's patience as we get those resolved. So the 40 new cases will bring us to a total reported of 3,236 since the beginning of the event. At this point, we have 47 total who have died as a result of COVID, and 2,422 that have been identified as recovered from the illness. Right now, we have 766 active cases. That reflects a bit of the backlog in terms of our ability to be able to reach out to every case and determine whether or not they can be released from isolation. We expect that number to go down in the next few weeks as well. One thing that we do know, and it confirms our sense that our case counts are more reflective by the 40 cases, new cases today, is that our hospitalizations have decreased. They fluctuate up and down from day to day, but we are seeing a trend that is downward. For several weeks, we saw that the Madera Community Hospital ICU was at or above capacity, and their limitation is truly healthcare staffing. They do have the ability to have more people in their hotel, in their hospital beds, and we're working towards increased number of ventilators available as well to be able to handle surge. And I was on the phone even with the state today to discuss how staffing might be quickly increased if we do experience a surge. And the state is put in the process of putting together ICU strike teams that are able to be quickly deployed to hospitals that need increased staffing, because that has been an identified need over the last month or two across California. So we are better equipped at this point if we do see a surge moving into the winter time, then we are better able to manage that. And we, until we have a better trend line with our data, it's really hard for us to see where we're going or what that looks like. Talking about surge capacity, it's really important to understand how the flu season will impact all of what's happening. So there's both the normal outcomes with regards to flu and what we see in terms of hospitalizations and deaths. But when you pair flu and COVID together, potentially in the same patient, that could lead to really acute illness in a larger number of patients. And so that's why it's really, really important for people to get a flu shot this year. And statewide, we're working to be able to coordinate rolling out as many flu vaccines as possible, and really reaching out to populations that may have not received a flu vaccination in the past. I want to highlight a Facebook Live event that happened yesterday with Dr. Paul, and the focus was on school sites to answer questions of teachers and parents and concerns, and what information is coming out both from the schools and from the state. And so while I don't have the time, and you obviously have other issues to address, I would really encourage people to view that Facebook Live event. That event was in English. He did answer a couple questions in Spanish, and we're working right now to identify a date, probably early next week, in which Dr. Paul will answer the same questions and then any other specific questions that are submitted, but in Spanish for our Spanish language community. So the overall snapshot of what's going on in terms of schools, as you know, schools are not allowed under state order to be open up for in-person instruction. And the state is working on guidance that will address very particular situations for kids that are maybe on IEPs or have special needs, that it's very difficult for them to do online learning. And we have expressed the importance of addressing what we see as an educational inequity for many of our families that are low income, that have challenges with regards to supervision of their kids because they're essential workers, and also the concerns with English language learners and their ability to really be able to actively engage online. There are so many issues, and Dr. Paul has been in conversations with our superintendents on a weekly basis at minimum. Sometimes it's more often, planning, answering questions to be able to do the best that we can. The real issue with opening up school sites is that if you have an outbreak, at this point, we don't have the testing capacity to be able to contain it before it's you're quarantining multiple classrooms. And if you have individual cases, more than a couple within a month, and your school is shut down. And so that's really problematic from a logistics standpoint, and wanting to have safe environments for students, teachers, and staff. And so I'm very happy to share with you that in collaboration with the state has authorized close to $2 million to be able to do an upgrade in our public health laboratory right here in Madera. And so what that will enable us to do, and it's going to take 3 to 4 months to do, because rolling out the ability to run high volume PCR COVID tests is really quite complicated. It involves upgrades to our physical infrastructure, the electrical, adding the equipment, having it calibrated. But really the biggest lift is the data management side of it. Excuse me, data management side of it. And we want to be able to receive the specimens, run those tests, but then also turn around and provide the results out. So that requires a high-tech system that will cost several $100,000 for us to be able to implement. I share all of that so that you understand why it's going to take 3 to 4 months for us to roll this important resource out to our community. We want to be able to provide rapid testing, and once we have that in place, we will be able to turn around tests, many of them same day, if not next day. So what that will do is give us the capacity to be able to open up our schools if our case counts are still low enough. So that's our real goal and what we're working towards in our community. Those are probably the biggest pieces. We continue to advocate for resources to come to the Valley. As you know, the governor has highlighted the Central Valley as having higher case counts. And so they're working very closely with us to be able to provide technical assistance, expertise, resources, coordination across the Central Valley and the region so that we're better able to address very specific needs in the Central Valley, and specifically our ag community and our farm worker population that have been working as essential workers from the very beginning, but have not necessarily had adequate resources to be able to receive all of the messaging in their language, especially with the indigenous Hispanic languages that are prevalent throughout many of our farm worker communities. And also with regards to literacy issues, many of the resources are in print, and so we're working towards getting many of those put into a video format so that it's easier, and also radio for sure, so that information is readily available, as well as very specific resources to quickly identify cases, help get those individuals into a place to safely isolate. And a lot of that includes contracting a lot of those services with organizations that have been working in the farm worker and ag community for a long time and are trusted, so that our farm workers feel safe, that they're able to share their information, and that the resources that they're getting are trusted. So I'll stop there and field any questions that people have.
Thank you, Sarah. And if you wouldn't mind sharing briefly, just for clarification, the case counts that keep us on the list or put us on that watch list is 100 per 100,000 residents in the county of Madera, or in our case, about 150 or so positive cases, and we have 766. So is that our target from the current 766 active cases to get down below 150?
Actually, our current as of today is 651. And so that might not be reflected on the dashboard just yet. I know it's on its way down. We expect that to drop fairly quickly. If we look at episode date, which it's difficult, right? We've been using reported date for a very long time. And so if we were to switch all of a sudden to episode date, people would be very confused, and it's already kind of confusing to explain to people the difference between those two. And so we have decided to stick with the method that we've been using, even though it overshoots. It's a high estimate until we actually get past the 14 days past the cow ready glitch. It's going to be higher than what the actual is. So our actual is more like between 300 and 400 per 100,000. We're much closer to that 100 goal that you described, and we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Sarah. Councilman Robinson.
I was wondering, did you talk about the teenager that was infected twice by COVID? Is it because of low immune system or underlying health issues?
So I don't know which teenager you're referring to.
I think Merced, he was infected twice by COVID. I heard it on the news.
I didn't hear that report, so I'm not familiar with the case.
Is it possible for people to get it twice?
So at this point, after review of all of the documented information, we do not believe that a person can become infected twice. There is not adequate evidence that that is true. What we do know is that individuals who have had COVID oftentimes have positive tests for several months because there's remnants of the dead DNA of the virus still in their system, and the PCR test will identify it again. So that's one of the reasons why we have the recommendation is not to test to determine that you've recovered, because we've seen with cases that we have, even though they have no symptoms, they're not sick again, they still have a positive test a month or even 2 months later, and it's because of the dead virus still residual in their system.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Councilman Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Member Dillon. And Sarah, thank you again for the presentation. I know you touched on the upcoming flu, and I'm great to see that numbers in the COVID are starting to come down, but we are getting fast approaching the flu season. And again, you touched on some of the actions that the organization has taken to try to alleviate that. But being that you said what COVID does with the flu, and being that it is an acute respiratory deal, can you foresee those projections to be much higher during that time? And what other suggestions are you bringing to the community as far as is the mandated face mask still something that we want to do, especially moving into the flu season? Because I think that's probably going to be a big surge of people that might come out positive and maybe more severe than what we've seen today.
At this point, we've never lived through a season in which it's COVID and flu season on top of one another. So no one can predict exactly what it's going to look like, but we are preparing for a surge like the surge that we saw before, but it might be worse. It might not be worse, because part of what led to the surge that we just that we're now resolving out of is that we didn't know how much COVID was transmitted through smaller droplets in the air, not through air conditioning systems. That is not something that has been proven. In fact, the virus is not stable enough. As soon as you manipulate it very much, it very quickly dies in the air. And so we do not believe that it's going through air conditioning systems, but we do know that masking is now super important. So with the implementation of universal masking all the time, we are really hopeful that that will prevent a surge like what we've seen. Now, when you consider flu at the same time, flu is transmitted in many similar ways. It's not identical, but all of the practices that people have now embedded into regular practice, like hand washing and wearing masks and social distancing, will also reduce your likelihood of catching the flu. So if you put the flu shot with that, we're really hoping that there's a level of protection in the patterns of behavior that we've established that will not produce the kind of surge that we're preparing for.
Thank you. And I know that obviously the COVID caught us off guard, because we haven't had something like this come before us. But as you said, you know that face masks covering obviously play a big part. And back when we first initiated the first presentations, we weren't sure whether or not face masks should be used and how often and what places, right? But now that we know that it is decreasing the amount or the spread, does the county have a position as far as adding additional mandates to its community especially after seeing a lot of the demographics of the people that are infected. Is that something that the county is prepared to take on yet, or are we still just abiding by what the state mandate is?
So the only additional mandate that would be added in terms of masking would be actions on behalf of local government to introduce the ability to issue citations. And that's not a public health action. That would be a city council or board of supervisors action to actually have an enforcement aspect to the masking order. And so we absolutely support universal masking and people using masks whenever they're in public. There's even evidence that if you have somebody who's a vulnerable individual living in your household, that wearing a mask when you're around them is probably a good idea as well. But in terms of additional mandates, we wouldn't have an additional mandate. The mandate to wear a mask is already there. It's just whether or not political bodies decide to take it a next step and have a citation process in play. And some cities and counties have decided to do that.
Okay. And I know that obviously this is something much bigger than the public health, but I want to get your opinion because obviously we know that it plays a big part in reducing the spread of COVID. And since you are the body or the agency that looks after something like this, you know, coming from you, I think it just resonates a lot more within our community. Then our public officials can take a stand on saying, hey, this is something that has proven to reduce the COVID spread. And if we don't continue to, and I hate to say the word enforce, but at least encourage people to continue to wear those masks, and you know, who knows what this flu season coming up can certainly do. And like you said, we haven't been there, haven't done that, but we can expect that if there is no coverings, then you can see another surge certainly going up. And those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
So
Thank you
the
very
one thing
much.
I will make a comment about as a public health expert, and certainly we could consider having Dr. Paul join me in a future one if you're actually deliberating about a decision related to any kind of citation ordinance or process. What I can tell you from doing a lot of work in public health with regards to behavior change is that there's a very careful balance between education and helping people come to a place of voluntary compliance, and then putting in place a mandate with an enforcement or a punishment, so to speak, for not following it. For some, it can cause them to come into compliance. And for others who you might have been able to pull into voluntary compliance, then you'll get resistance. Because it's somebody who's forcing them to do something instead of inviting them into a positive behavior for them, their families, and their neighbors. And so those are considerations to certainly talk through as you deliberate what you might take as an action.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Thank you, Sarah. One last question from Councilman Robinson.
Yes, I was thinking that, you know, some of those face masks, they seem like they're kind of flimsy, like those tube face masks you put over on your neck. It's like a scarf, and they just cover their nose, and it's real thin. And you know, I was thinking, how can you get protection, you know, with that type of mask? And also, I think that it's a personal choice if you want to wear it outside. Of course, if you're gonna go into a business with a lot of people, then it should be mandatory to wear one. But walking around, you know, in the fresh air, I think that's a personal choice. It shouldn't be a citation, or because then you get the police involved, and then they might get infected. Then we have less policemen to patrol. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Again, Sarah, thank you so very, very much for this update. And we always appreciate you and your team. And you're accessible. If you need to contact Sarah or anybody from her team, you can contact the Madera County Health Department. Thank you very much, Sarah. It's always good to see you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Before we move on to the workshops, I gave some misinformation in regards to this evening's meeting and being able to participate remotely via phone. I gave the wrong number, and that number, if it can be passed on, or hopefully it does some good, but that number is 669-900-6833, and the ID number is 928-0724-6468, hashtag or pound, followed by *9 on your phone to speak. Once again, that number is 669-900-6833, and the ID number is 928-0724-6468, pound. Moving on to our first workshop this evening, item A1. This is the limitations on political activities of city elected officials and city employees. Ms. Montoy will be giving this workshop.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. It's not really a workshop. It's just a little overview and presentation for your assistance and for that of members of the public. There were a few questions that your city manager and I received concerning the permissible activities that council members in particular could engage in regarding the ballot measure that you have submitted to the voters at the November election. And with that, the city manager and I decided that it would be helpful for me to provide a guidance to everyone concerning what is permissible and what is not permissible. And so that is what I have done. I have prepared a very extensive memo. It was distributed to you, council, yesterday, as well as to the city manager, who in turn is or will be distributing to the entire staff of the city of Madera. So with that, I'm just going to give a very brief overview because I think the memo speaks for itself. There's lots of detail in there. And of course, if you have questions, once you review it, you're certainly free to give me a call. Basically, everybody knows that everyone has a fundamental right to participate in political activities in America. We still have that right. So that does not change for city employees or city elected officials. You have a right to campaign for ballot measures, be they city measures or other measures, and to campaign and endorse or oppose candidates that are running for public office. However, there are various laws that do provide parameters and limitations on doing that while you are on city time, when you are on city property, when you are using city resources, when you are using staff and the like. And there's quite a few laws that I outlined in the memo, and they all pretty much revolve around the premise that city funds and resources may not be used for political purposes. They may not be used on campaigns of any sort, be they for candidates or for ballot measures. And so with that, all I'm doing this evening, since I have distributed that memo, is to remind the city council and staff to read and to review the memo, which includes a very lengthy list of actually a list of do's, which are activities that you may participate in, and a longer list of don'ts. And in a nutshell, I'll give you just 5 points, 5 takeaways, if you will. Again, to repeat, city officials and employees may not use public staff or funds, such as official city time, facilities, or other resources to oppose a candidate, to endorse a candidate, or a ballot measure. 2, the best way for the city to avoid crossing the line of impermissible activity is to refrain from any communication or actions that somebody could construe as advocacy. Yes, the city may and city officials on their own, on city time even, may talk about, yes, the city has placed a ballot measure on the ballot. The ballot measure would do the following, but you can't cross the line and start saying, so vote yes, because it's going to be a wonderful thing for the city. You can't cross that line, or do it in such a way that it's really, really close to advocacy. And there was a really good example that I saw in one of the documents that I reviewed, where they had a poster or a bumper sticker with it was a school measure, and they had the school measure and it said, support your schools. And they had a really big yellow bus, and then they had vote for measure, whatever it was. And then the city, or then the district with its district funds did the same thing, exactly the same language, exactly the writing, the color, the yellow bus, everything, except they left out vote for measure, whatever it was. And that was still too close for comfort. It was still more, it looked more like advocacy because it was during an election for a particular measure. So there are some gray lines, and it's important to if you have any doubts, if you are not sure about whether you should do something or say something, don't. That's my best advice. Don't do it. And check with your city manager or check with me, and we'll be helpful to see if we can respond to your question and whether you can proceed to do what you would like to do. And there's one in particular that's really interesting. It has to do with mass mailings. Council members and department heads who've been through the AB 1234 training have gone through the mass mailing requirements, where the city cannot mail more than 200 items with public funds at the same time per month, etc. There's an extra layer when it's 60 days before an election. So 60 days before an election, I'm recommending to your city manager that any documents that are distributed to the public, that they be reviewed to ensure that they have not crossed that line. Because generally they would be permissible, like a newsletter, but be 60 days before election, they may not be. So that's something to be careful about. And then finally, all I can say is that the stakes are high for anyone who may become involved in crossing that line that I've discussed. And it could be civil or criminal liability, personal civil or criminal liability. So be very careful. And the other thing, when it comes to ballot measures that I've observed, is that when something happens and somebody does cross a line or gets very close to it, the focus becomes on that activity, and it takes away from the merits of the ballot measure itself. So keep that in mind. That is pretty much it. Take a look at that memo and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Montoya. We appreciate that information. Any questions from council or from staff regarding the non-workshop status update from Ms. Montoya? Seeing none, hearing none. Thanks again, Hilda. We appreciate that update. Moving on to the next status update, if you will. This is on coordination with the Madera Irrigation District on the airport basin located near the northeast corner of Avenue 16 and Condor Drive. I believe our city manager will be presenting this one, Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor, and members of the council. I'm going to be turning it over to Keith, but prior to Keith beginning his presentation, I do simply want to preface that the council may recall that this item was continued from the last meeting. At the last meeting, we had, and I'm saying we as in terms of city staff, had provided some information in the staff report. Subsequent to the staff report being prepared, we identified a couple of typos in the staff report, and we attempted to clarify those. So I do apologize for I do want to apologize to the council, because I understand that did create a little bit of confusion. Since that meeting, we have, I'm saying we in terms of city staff, have met with MID staff, and we feel like we've added a lot of clarification, and there's a better understanding today than what we had 2 weeks ago. But I do want to apologize to the council publicly, because quite frankly, we should have been a little bit more thorough in the preparation of the report, and for that I take full responsibility. So with that, I'll turn it over to Keith. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. I would like to echo the city manager's statements. I also apologize for that. With that, we'd like to go ahead and give a short little presentation or workshop with regard to the MID basin, or excuse me, to the airport basin. And we'll start off with a history of the partnership. The city and MID have a history of partnering for mutually beneficial projects. There are several things that we've done in recent years that exhibit that partnership. Part of that is the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which resulted in the Groundwater Sustainability Plan. That sustainability plan was completed and submitted to the state in January 30th of this year. Also, the Berry Basin, which was completed by MID about a year and a half ago. That was a partnership between the city and MID, in that we provided the basin. They made a connection to it, and they had dropped water into it, a significant amount of water in the last water season. That has been beneficial towards the groundwater sustainability plan. The airport basin, which we're talking about tonight, and then the approval of the golf course basin at the last meeting as well. The history of the partnership: in some cases, the city owns the basins and receives water from MID. In all cases, it helps to replenish the underground aquifer. In other cases, MID owns the basin and allows the city to temporarily store urban runoff, which prevents the localized flooding. That's an example of the airport basin again. MID has provided that, allowed us to go ahead and use that basin, and we drop water into it, and it is held there, prevents flooding, and contributes to recharge of the aquifer. In either scenario, the community does benefit because the groundwater does recharge. In some cases, city receives groundwater recharge credit, while others, MID does not. Those particular cases are the Berry Basin again, and also the upcoming golf course basin. A little bit about the background on the agreements. The first agreement that was in place was June 21st, 2000. The coordination agreement was executed. That agreement foresaw future agreements such as the supplemental agreement. The supplemental agreement was approved in 2003. It generally stands alone, from separate from the original coordination agreement. August 5th, 2020, we took the airport basin agreement to council. That was continued. We are planning on taking that back to council on September 2nd. On August 6th, the MID Board of Directors met, and we did have council members there as well as city manager. On August 11th, MID did provide the letter of city requesting that the city take action by September 15th with regard to the airport agreement. A little bit of background on the location. As you'll see in this higher aerial view of the area, the basin is highlighted in green. The basin is generally south of Aviation Drive, west of Falcon, and directly west of the new fire station. The larger area is divided up into MID use and city use. The city use there, you'll see it has a number of lower areas where water accumulates presently. We do have some outlet structure. We have two outlet structures into it right now. They're kind of obvious. If you see my cursor, this is one of the outlet structures, and this is another outlet structure. The pipe for this one comes in from this direction. The airport basin agreement. At the city's request, MID is willing to extend the airport basin agreement until the year 2053. What the agreement does, it allows clarifying amendments to be incorporated into that agreement. The existing agreement sunsets on April 25th, 2028. City staff does recommend extending that agreement given the benefits that the city does receive. The existing agreement includes a clause that either party may terminate the agreement within 2 years, or with a 2-year notice. That is mirrored in the proposed new agreement. And just an overview between the two of them. The new agreement is desired to standardize and clarify. It includes the current agreement template. The current template has been used on multiple locations that I'm aware of. One is the Berry Basin, the other is also the golf course basin, and I believe it was also used on a basin north of Alice Street between MID and the county. The term for the new agreement is the same as the existing agreement. That's 25 years. The original agreement was going to expire in April of 2028. The new agreement is proposed to expire April 2028 and then be extended for an additional 25 years. The why it's April is because the existing USBR license actually expires in April as well. So if the agreements, the license and the agreement expire at the same time, they're coincidental and decisions are made with both of them simultaneously. Couple of other overviews of the agreements or pieces of them at least. The groundwater recharge credits for the airport basin. Want to go ahead and clarify that in that the city does not receive credits for that. City stormwater goes into that basin. That water it recharges the aquifer, but the city does not receive credits on that, either with MID or through the groundwater sustainability plan. Recharge within the city is generally assumed as part of our, when you balance against the use of the water that we take and the amount of water that goes into the groundwater back into the aquifer, that's balanced in the groundwater sustainability plan. We can change that in any number of ways and there won't be any additional credits. When MID water drops water into that basin, there are no credits to the city. That is their water, and in fact, MID owns that basin. That is something we just clarified in the last probably less than a week or so. MID does own the basin. It continues to show under the United States Bureau of Reclamation, and we will continue to see license agreements with the USBR or the Bureau of Reclamation, but MID does own the basin. If the city does not enter into an agreement, the city would more than likely need to construct a new basin in the general vicinity. The piping through there would require us to go ahead and try to put it nearby. Recommended action tonight, there is no recommended action. As a result, because this is a workshop, there is no recommended action. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that information. Once again, Councilman Rodriguez has a question.
Yes, and more so a comment. I think you already touched on this here, Keith, regarding the ownership. And one of the things I think that we were going back and forth, and Mr. Gracie was reiterating that the district owned the property, but the recitals showed different, that it was owned by the Bureau of Reclamation. So you made that point. Now that would also be added on the new agreement that we have?
It will be added in the staff report itself.
Okay, because technically, I'm not sure, are you saying that, because we know that the MID owns it now, but the recitals show differently. That will change as well to reflect MID?
Yeah, what I'll go ahead and look at that. If the recitals in the agreement says that, and I can pull it up here very quickly, but
yeah, I think we can clarify that. There's still 2 weeks to get the agreement finalized.
Perfect.
And brought to the council.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the questions that was brought up, and I think Mr. Gracie continued to reiterate that this was owned by MID. Well, it was a little different here in the recital. So thank you for pointing that out, and yes, we can correct that.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Any other questions from council and or staff? If that's the only thing that we need to tidy up, we just really need to make sure that that and anything else is taken care of in the next 2 weeks or at our next regularly scheduled meeting, when this will be an agendized item to move forward. If there's nothing else, thank you very much, Mr. Helmuth. Appreciate your diligence with this matter. And we'll move on to item A3. Item A3, this is the Water, Sewer, Storm Drainage, and Solid Waste Rate Studies, RFP number 202021-01. And I believe Mr. Sanchez will be taking this.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. So my goal this evening is to give you a brief update on a search for the right consultants for the city to help the city with a comprehensive rate study. So just hopefully it'll be a brief update. So the enterprise funds, such as the water and sewer drainage, operate under the cost recovery assumptions. There's no rate increases just for the sake of making money. That's not the purpose. It's just to recover cost. Also, Proposition 218 rejects the concepts of subsidies, and each fund should cover its own cost. Funds may not be transferred to the general fund. So as in recent years, increased capital and operational capacity, the growth in the community, there's a need for a detailed analysis of cost recovery for the upcoming 5 to 10 years. The current 5-year rate study cover at the end of June of this year. So it's been 5 years. The upcoming study recommends to include all enterprise funds. So the storm drainage, for example, has not been adjusted since 1992. So it's been close to 30 years. Also, the recent analysis indicate that the sewer fund has been operating under some losses. So we've been using fund balances to support. So there's a need for to take a look into the rates. As I mentioned before, the last rate study was conducted in 2014, 2015, so it's been 5 years already. And so we're recommending that we proceed and we research and investigate a rate study for the upcoming from 2015 to 2020. So best practices suggest that a new study be prepared every 5 years. So we've started to search for consultants. And the RFP calls for proposals rather than bids. The goal is to identify the most qualified companies. Notification of the RFP was sent to 11 consultants. It's been posted on the city website and published on the Madera Tribune on Saturday, August 15th of this year and Wednesday of August 19th. The deadline to respond to the RFP is September 11. So various departments will review the proposals and recommend a consultant. We anticipate Proposition 218 to be conducted in early part of 2021 if council wishes to do so. And this is just intended to give you a quick update of we're being proactive as to what is overdue. And with that, if you have any comments or questions or feedback, I'll be happy to discuss.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanchez. I appreciate that and looking forward to moving forward with this. Any questions of council for Mr. Sanchez or the team? Well, we'll look at that. Mr. Sanchez, you did such a fantastic report. There are no questions at this moment anyway, but I'm sure as we move forward, there will be a few more. Thank you very much for that update. We really appreciate it. We will now move into our consent calendar. Matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, a member of the public or a member of the council may request an item to be removed from the consent calendar, and it will be considered separately. Reminder to council, item B3 has been stricken from the consent calendar. I will now ask my colleagues if there's any consent item that you wish to pull. If not, I'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent calendar, omitting B3.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Rodriguez and seconded by Councilman Montes to approve the consent calendar excluding item B3. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously with Councilman Hawley being absent. Thank you very much for that. And I know there's a few people with us this evening on Zoom. I really that are probably here for item D2. We're very, very close to that since we're on item D1. I appreciate your patience. We just have one more item and then we'll move forward. And that item is item D1. This is the Avenue 13 Interceptor Sewer Rehabilitation and Informational Report and Capital Improvement Budget Amendment. Once again, Mr. Hellman.
Actually, Ellen Bitter will be presenting this.
Great. Good evening, Ms. Bitter.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council and other Zoom participants. I will share my screen. Okay. So tonight I am presenting you with some updates on, is this working? No.
It is not.
There we go.
There you go.
Thank you. One more click. So these are updates to an issue that was discovered while we were completing the final phases of our video inspection as part of our sewer condition assessment. We were coming into what we thought was the home stretch, going out to the wastewater treatment plant, and in the area where the big red arrow is, they ran into some trouble. There was a lot of debris in the line, and they looked closer at the video, and what happened is we were notified that they saw some significant corrosion and degradation of the line, similar to what we had experienced 3 or 4 years ago in the Schnorr pipeline, and also similar to a lot of the corrosion we saw at the wastewater treatment plant in some of the wet wells. For the council members that were here at the time, they might recall seeing some of the photos of how the concrete had eroded and a lot of the rebar and reinforcing material was exposed. So this is the photo that we received. It's from the inside of the 42-inch pipe, right where that red arrow is. And what you can see it's kind of a ribbed feature throughout the pipe. That is the reinforcing bars exposed. Normally you would see a smooth wall covered with smooth concrete. And what's happened is the hydrogen sulfide gases have caused for the concrete to corrode. And as the aggregate and the concrete cement materials start to peel away, then the rebar is exposed. This is concerning. And as you can see, the consultant noted that the structural integrity is compromised. We are not in an emergency situation and we're not panicking, but we're trying to be proactive and take care of this so we don't need to panic and deal with the catastrophe, which is more what we experienced in 2016 in the Schnorr pipeline. So just to get a bearing of where we are, this is again the Avenue 13 sewer interceptor, and actually it heads northeast and then north, and it picks up the material that comes out of the lift station that serves the part of the city. So right here in red was where we experienced the collapse and the emergency repair of Schnorr. At the time, we did video the line south to determine the limits, and the corrosion was not so significant that we needed to include it with this project. So that I just wanted to give you an idea where that was in relation to this project we're talking about now. For a description, this was a picture of the Schnorr pipeline, the before condition. As you can see, it's much more rutted. There are large aggregate exposed. That means most of the cement is gone. And in fact, what happened in Schnorr, they found most of the reinforcing material, the metal, the bars, had actually corroded and disintegrated. So this is way past where we are today on Avenue 13. So another comparison side by side, the upper left is Avenue 13 and the lower right is Schnorr. So this is to give you you can take a breath before we move into what's coming up ahead of us. So we're working on completing the evaluation of the pipeline. We asked the consultant to continue videoing. We had to switch methodologies because there was so much debris in the line that they're actually floating the camera downstream. It's good because now they can do it during the day. They were having to go out in the middle of the night. I was actually able to go out and view some of the video while it was going on to confirm. The level of degradation varies. There is significant corrosion, but not all are as bad as that first picture that we saw. But it does raise concern, and we are looking at some kind of treatment on the whole pipeline. The inspection is about 85% complete, and following that, our consultant engineer, Akel Engineering, and then he also has a sub-consultant working with him, Stantec. They're evaluating the video and making their recommendations of severity. And at the moment, they have, like I said, we're not in an emergency situation, but they do recommend that this get treated within the next 2 years. So as part of the evaluation, there are several rehabilitation strategies to consider, and I've got another slide that lists them. And then at the same time, we also need to consider the funding strategies. So somewhat of a good segue from our discussion on the rate study coming up. This project kind of came about after our CIP process for the year. It came about after we had put together our budget for the year. So that's why we're here before you with a new project and a new budget appropriation. So there are 5 different possibilities on addressing this line. I want to let you know that it's almost 4 miles of pipeline. So if you can imagine what the costs will be for any of the methods, they all have their pros and cons, either cost-wise or constructability, how much pavement is cut, and how much of the roadway do we need to keep open during construction. So briefly, there is slip lining, which is inserting a smaller diameter pipe into the existing line. The second one is cure-in-place pipe. That's what we did on Schnorr. You slip fold a liner in there, and then you expand it, and then it's cured. There are various methods to cure it, and that conforms to the existing pipe, and you don't lose too much of your inside diameter. Pipe bursting is where you push a new pipe through the existing pipe, either same size or a little larger, and then there is a nozzle at the front that basically almost explodes or breaks apart the old pipe while the new pipe is pushing through. We did that method on 9th Street under the railroad when we replaced that pipeline. The traditional method of remove and replace, which is cutting open the pavement and removing the old pipe and replacing with new pipe. And then last is a consideration of a parallel pipe, which would allow the current pipe to stay in operation and then construct a parallel pipe with open cutting at the same time. The benefits to that are our master plan does identify a future parallel pipe in Avenue 13, so it would make sense. And then at the time it's needed, we'll have the new pipe in place, and then the old pipe can be rehabilitated and brought on, and then we'd have the capacity of both pipes in place. So once we move forward, we'll be seeking a request for proposals for an engineer to guide us through this process and evaluate all these recommendations. There could be a combination depending upon the nature of the damage in the pipe. And they will also assist us with funding strategies. Like I said, we need to keep that in mind at the forefront as we work through this. So if we're fortunate enough where it's more of a spot repair project, the cost could be on the low end, and I'm really ballparking that without better information, but I guesstimated at about $1 million using figures from our consultants and assuming a project along the entire length. It's closer to 10 to 12 million. That definitely surpasses our fund balance in the sewer fund. And So we've been talking to Stantec, again, who is a consultant to ACEL, and they think we could be a good candidate for up to $3 million grant through the Economic Development Agency, because as this is the main sewer interceptor, it's vital to the economic businesses in Madera, and so there is justification for that grant. We could also partner and match possibly with state revolving funds, which would provide very low interest loans. Sometimes they're no interest, and they could match the 3 million. And then the balance, at that point, we'd have to have a good understanding of our sewer funds. We definitely want to roll those figures into the upcoming rate study and make sure that we're captured for any kind of debt service that we might incur because due to this project. All the while, we need to continue our other repair and replacement for the remaining sewer mains that are also nearing the end of their life. And we had originally planned about $1 to $2 million a year for those projects in the previous rate study, but I think we need to continue with that and also capture this major rehab. The pipe is as old as the wastewater treatment plant. It's nearing 50 years old. It's not unexpected, and there is concentrated effluent, and the level of the hydrogen sulfide gases are higher. So it's about at its time with regard to this Avenue 13 line. So tonight I'm requesting that you consider this information and approve a budget amendment appropriating $400,000 that we do have in our sewer fund balance to start the preliminary engineering phase. That would get an engineer on board, so then we can continue to scope the project, look for funding sources, and then prepare contract documents and better estimates for your information. I do have, if you have any more questions on the additional methods, we have some follow-up slides with some details if you're interested, but at this time I will take any questions or if you have any comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bitter. Would you mind going back to the map that showed Avenue 13 and where we had the fix on Schnorr?
Yes.
And then just for clarification, while you do that, the 400,000 is not for any type of work whatsoever. That's just to get an engineer on board to do the consulting. And so this portion here where it says the red arrow that you had before the portion, yeah. So that's about 5,800 feet. Or you said it was about 4 miles, and so the 4 miles you're talking about, is that whole stretch right there?
Yes, it would start here at Schnorr and Industrial, and we have about 5,800 feet of 42-inch pipe, and then we have another 1,295 feet of 42-inch diameter pipe to it's about road 23 and a half out in the country, and then another 17,000 feet of 48-inch going all the way out.
Okay, thank you for that. It was just clarification. When I first saw the red arrow on the 5,800 feet, just slightly over a mile, and then you said about 4 miles, I was just a little bit confused. And so you'll bring back to council that engineer's report down the road, which would then give us options, what we would be able to do when it comes to repairs, and of course, a cost estimate at that time.
Yes.
And again, you brought up the Schnorr, when that pipe, which looked horrible, by the way, and fell through. Once we get to that point, the price tag goes up immensely, and we really have no choice at that time.
Right. At this time, we will have the benefit of competitively bidding the project. That one we did not. We had to find first available.
Right.
And that was expensive.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Bitter. I appreciate that. Councilman Rodriguez has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Madon. Ellen, and you might have answered the question just now, but to the extent of the $12 million, when you say replacement of the entire length, was that length you just described now?
Yes, that would include removal and replacement of at least from Granada, which is here by the red arrow, to the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, so that's the entire project. Instead of doing the spot repair, then there's the alternative that if it's something that's severe, then potentially it can reach up to $12 million to repair the whole thing. Correct?
Easily.
And all that stretch there is a 50-year-old pipe.
Yes, that this pipe went in as one of the phases of the construction of the wastewater treatment plant. So it's the same age.
So if I may, and maybe this is not a question for you or anyone here, but if it's a 50-year-old pipe and we are trying to tack this on to ratepayers moving forward, I mean, we're looking at something like this happening maybe in the next 50, 60 years also. How do we incorporate adequate rates so that we're not having to go back and do the debt financing or having to look for grants, but rather we're sufficient in the way what we're collecting is keeping up not only with the treatment of water, but also with our sewer and maybe for capital projects such as these. Where did we go wrong? Because now you're saying that there's only a reserve balance of 400,000.
Well, right, there's adequate funds in the reserve balance to fund the 400,000 that's needed. So I believe that, and Roger could state this, without factoring in depreciation of our existing facilities as far as dollars in the bank, I think we're well above that for the sewer fund. But we do need to recognize the age and the infrastructure, and that is an output from the condition assessment, because they will then have evaluated the entire system and given us a snapshot of what our system looks like and have a program for maintenance and repair and replacement, a regular approach so that we don't end up with these huge projects hitting us all at once.
Yeah, and I think that's to my point, is that when we factor in these repairs and maintenance moving forward, I think with this rate study, I think we can take that approach. But is this what we lacked previously, that we weren't collecting sufficient for these types of maintenance and future? I don't know if there was deferred maintenance, or maybe we just didn't collect sufficient in the rates. I mean, I hate to talk about rates because it's always something that nobody wants to pay. But obviously, it seems like we have lacking infrastructure, and yet we don't have a way to pay for that.
Alan, if I could go ahead and maybe jump in on that.
Sure.
It was during the last rate study that there was additional funds put in place for the city to go ahead and move forward with proactive reviews of the sanitary sewer system as well as the water system in Madera. It was council's looking forward that allowed those funds to be put in place, and we moved forward with the sewer and water assessments. Prior to that time, there was not a solidly effective approach to doing this. So what this is allowing us to do is to identify those pipes within the system that are either approaching end of life, need additional maintenance, what have you, in terms of cost. When we put this into the rate study, we added the cost to the study, and we also started building in annualized depreciation. More specifically, I'll say additional cost of, I think, $1 million+ per year in anticipation of the sewer and water assessments throwing off projects that we would need to do in the near term as well as the longer term. So while it's a new thing, it actually began about 5 years ago with the previous rate assessment, when the Schnorr sewer line broke and collapsed. We had already started beginning that. We didn't have the opportunity to get to Schnorr before that collapsed, but the fact that this study is moving forward and identifying these things before we have failures is a good thing.
Thank you, Keith. And again, to my point, all I wanted to make sure is that and I'm sure it's part of it is that when this rate study that we're factoring in future future costs for things such as these. You know, obviously pipes don't last forever, but we're factoring that in so that when 50 years comes down the road, we're not like, oops, we just didn't have enough. You know, we just didn't collect. We didn't do a prudent job to try to factor in those rates.
Exactly right. What you're asking about is what we're is our goal. The rate study, or excuse me, the assessments will throw off a number of projects. This one happened to throw off a lot quicker than what we would like, but it's thrown out a few things. There are a few sewer repairs that have been identified as critical, but I think many of the reviews have indicated that we have a number of years before we need to do things on other pipes. It's been this one as a critical review and 3 or 4 patch repairs. Alan, have you recently, have our consultants recently identified any other high concerns? I think that this is the most recent, in addition to a few breaks in pipes.
What we've received so far ahead of the report, because we asked the consultant to highlight any that need attention before we can get to a programmed approach, is nothing of this significance. There are some areas, but the projects are, I think we have them programmed at about $1 million right now, and that gets the urgent ones, and then we'll get into a state of being proactive, and just based on the age and the high risk pipes, we will probably routinely work on a maintenance strategy for them moving forward. So, but nothing else has come out of urgent need other than this one now at the end.
Let's hope that that's the case. But thank you again, Ellen, for your presentation, and thank you, Keith, for answering the question.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
Yeah, exactly to that point. So what we're looking to do is be proactive so it doesn't happen again, or at least we can be proactive to make sure that we're looking into the others. Please, Keith, could you go back to that one slide where you had the different examples of what could be done? Just very quickly, and we'll probably move on. This is something we can all agree that we need to do. Yeah, so I would be interested in looking what is most cost effective, what is the best that we could do. Some of these examples that you have here, I've never even heard of, so I have no idea what that would mean, but most certainly if we could get the most bang for our buck and be able to do the best type of job. I'm interested in parallel pipe cost, what that would mean, because we could be putting that in, but that's not exactly something that I really know about whether, that would be the best option. I would lean toward that, but I'm not really sure. And then going back to identifying other problem areas, I think that you are doing a good job by being proactive in looking for that. So I would not want to see a repeat of Schnorr. So moving forward, I think is our best option, and I would support that. Using those funds. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that, and that's going to segue into my comments based on what Mayor Pro Tem had just said and Councilman Rodriguez. I'm very happy to hear you both say that, and I will tell you this quite frankly. This study was done 5 years ago, and these very same options were brought up to council. As a matter of fact, I think the consultant at the time had said, in our coffers, in our savings, if you will, we had maybe 2 years of maintenance and operations left to do some rehab projects like that. And as Keith had mentioned, we were proactive in that we need to do an assessment of our underground water and sewer before something like that happened. And it was a matter of months before Schnorr had happened. Being proactive at the time and bringing this to the forefront, keep in mind that it came with an asterisk, because politically, council has to have that political will to move forward and understand that rates will go up. And nobody wants to put this on the backs of our current ratepayers. Councilman Rodriguez's point, if we continue to kick this can down the road, future councils and future ratepayers will then have to pick up a much larger tab. So I hope the comments that were made now will continue over after we get that rate study, because more than likely rates have to go up to keep your infrastructure alive. And much better to spend even $1 million on 4 miles of infrastructure than 1.2 or $1.4 million on a block or so of infrastructure, which is about what we have to do. So having the political will from this council, understanding that nobody wants rates to go up, these are things that we have to do in order to keep our foundation, which is water, sewer, and ponding basins that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. I will even go so far as to say those rates were challenged and criticized by some developers and some people in the community that said that was nothing more than a ploy to fill the gaps in our budget, or nothing more than a way to fund high price management. And just like was explained to us before, these enterprise funds, we cannot do that. Yes, there is a portion that goes to funding certain salaries, but that's not why we did it. So based on the comments I just heard, I hope that we can take that conversation moving forward, understanding that we do not want to put this on totally on the back of the ratepayer, but if we can continue incrementally and as small as possible, have an assessment of those rates and not kick the can down the road so that we will end up putting this on the backs of the ratepayer. That's all I have. Thank you very much for that report. If there's no further comment, I will ask our city clerk if there's been any comment via email or otherwise.
No, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I don't have any on the attendees, so if there's no further comments, questions, I will bring it back to council for action.
I so move to approve D1 as presented.
Okay.
Been moved by Councilwoman Gallegos, and although I don't think he was the second, it's the voice I recognize, Councilman Montes second that motion. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously 6-0 with Councilman Hawley being absent. Moving on to item D2. This is dedication of the playground at Centennial Park in honor of Thaddeus Schron. Again, I want to thank everybody who's here with us this evening for your patience. Hopefully what we've already discussed was a little interesting and enlightening, but for the whole reason why we're here. I'd like to thank my colleagues from the bottom of my heart for unanimously agreeing to bring this back to council for this discussion and action this evening. So thank you all very, very much. And with that, I will pass it off to our Parks Director, Mr. John Scarborough.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, council. Let me share my screen here. Let's see. Let's do this one. It does not seem to be working. Why? Can you see it now?
No, John, can we see it on the previous screen?
Yeah,
Oh, you did?
You had it. It just wasn't full screen, but you had it.
Yeah, it just wasn't full screen.
Yeah, that's it there.
So if you share your full screen, John, there it goes.
There you go. You got it.
That it?
That's it.
Good. So tonight we're going to talk about the dedication of the playground at Centennial Park in honor of Thaddeus Schron. On July 15th, the parents of Thaddeus Schron reported his disappearance to the Madera Police Department. A county-wide search began, comprised of the Madera Police Department, community members, local businesses, and city staff, all of which were aided by the United States Marshal's Office, the Madera County Sheriff's Office, the City of Chowchilla Police Department, and the federal FBI. Unfortunately, the Madera community was shocked on July 23rd when it was determined that Thaddeus had died under tragic circumstances. The Madera community has a long history of coming together in times of need and continued this tradition during this difficult and emotional period. Both the business community and individuals volunteered their time and resources to aid in the efforts to locate young Thaddeus. These contributions and support continue to this day. Two groups, the Warriors of Faith and Justice for Thaddeus, along with elected officials, have suggested dedicating the playground at Centennial Park in memory of young Thaddeus. Thaddeus had special needs. He was nonverbal and did not yet walk, among other challenges, most of which were caused by his preterm birth. The Centennial Park Playground was built specifically for children like Thaddeus. It was designed to be used by children with a wide range of physical abilities, where children and their families could enjoy the health, social, educational, enhanced self-esteem benefits of outdoor physical play. This is a picture of the playground. It was taken just about when it was completed, but I think prior to being opened. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but it does show some of the, so the playground is a mutually inclusive playground. So it is intended to serve children with a wide range of mobility. Some of the areas in the picture to the right where you show the green surface underneath the poppies and then just above that, the yellow surface, that is poured place rubber. That surface is specifically put in place to allow children who are in wheelchairs or children with severe mobility challenges to transition across it so that they can access these individual features. It's something that the community should be very proud of, and I believe that we all are. The Warriors of Faith and the Justice for Thaddeus have committed to raising funds utilizing a motorcycle rally, which took place on August 15th, and community outreach to provide financial resources to properly dedicate the playground with a memorial plaque. There will be a small amount of staff time associated with the installation of the memorial plaque and some support during the dedication process. And the precise location and design of the plaque has yet to be determined. With that being said, staff recommends that City Council adopt a resolution dedicating the playground at Centennial Park in honor of Thaddeus Sron. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Helmuth. And before I get into questions, I'd like to introduce some people that are with us this evening. You had mentioned Justice for Thaddeus. We have with us Victoria Castaneda and I believe Maricruz Martinez. You're also with Justice for Thaddeus. And then the Warriors for Christ. We have with us this evening Jeanette Rodriguez, and you see Jose Luna right there with us. I'm not sure if I missed anybody, but I'd like maybe Jeanette, you can say a few words about the motorcycle rally that happened this last weekend and how things came about when you and the Warriors for Christ wanted to do so much for young Thaddeus here in Madera.
One morning, well, first of all, I have a grandson who has special needs, as well as our national president, Robert, and his wife, Elizabeth Luna. They have a special needs son as well. But it was right after the terrible incident had happened, and I got a call from Mr. Luna's wife, and it was, something weighing very heavily on her heart, and she had told me that she wanted to do something for this child that was, weighing heavy on her heart. She was thinking more or less of a bike run, and so with that, I prayed, and the Lord ordered my steps, and I started making calls to different, organizations. I called Valley Children's at first, no callbacks. I called the police department, and then I finally I called the city council, and Mr. Rodriguez returned my call, and I knew it was God, because when I spoke to him, he said that he was on the call late that evening with the mayor, and had been discussing more or less the same, naming the park after him. So that's when I knew that that it was something that God was leading us to do. And this little child had impacted a lot of our hearts. And so we, put the run together, and bikes from all over the Central Valley came out. We had over 100 of riders that came out, so much support. People that didn't even want to go on the run, just came out just to give. People that seen all the motorcycles in the town, didn't even know about the run, but seen the motorcycles and came out to the park and wanted to give. Just so many people reaching out to us. And like I said, bikers from all over the Central Valley that came out and wanted to support this Angel of Madera. And we are based out of Fresno. So like I said, we didn't have to be from Madera in order to be touched by this. But we definitely wanted to be a part in honoring his name. And so with that being said, the run was amazing. It was everything we wanted it to be. And we collected the funds. We had set a goal of approximately, because we've never, we didn't know how much a plaque would be. So I know when I first talked with Mr. Rodriguez, we had said anywhere in the range of 2,500. And I said, okay, well, that's a good goal. We'll start with that and we'll try to reach that. And, give God the glory that we ended up collecting $3,049 that day.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was really nice.
That's fantastic. Absolutely
Robert,
fantastic.
if you have anything you would like to add to it?
No, sister, you said it perfectly. I just want to thank once again the city council. I'd like to thank the mayor for letting us come aboard in this trying time. Also, Victoria and her group with Justice for Thaddeus. Thank you guys for accepting us and helping us do what we did. And we're here to help in any way. If you guys got anything going on also, feel free to invite us for anything. It's what we do, come together as a community in a time like this. And it was just, all the praise to God, all the glory to God. Just very grateful to be part of it. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely, Robert. Absolutely. We'll come back to you guys in just a little bit, but I want to introduce Victoria Castaneda, who I also had the pleasure of meeting and discussing under these difficult circumstances. Victoria, good to see you again, and you maybe want to share a little bit about you and your group and how things came about. You're on mute. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. All right. So it just happened the day that he went missing. About 10 of us moms came on the Facebook page, Madera Community Police Department. And from then on, the next day we made flyers, and we haven't stopped spreading his name since then. It's been hard on all of us, but we're ready to get this park done for him. We're all in. And we want to thank you guys for even making this possible. It's amazing that the community came through this much for this little baby. Just want to thank you guys.
You're welcome. And I think really the inspiration comes from you and Jeanette and the Warriors for Christ, as she had mentioned, from Fresno. But young Thaddeus, in so many ways, impacted all of us. We all have children of our own, or neighbors, or somehow, some way. I know he's in heaven looking down, knowing that he was loved by so many people in our community. So the inspiration really came from all of you in the community. Ms. Martinez, did you have something that you want to add? Maricruz?
I'm really not a talkative person, but I think Victoria covered it real good. And the same thank you to all of you guys for all your support.
You're welcome. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but thank you for being patient and being with us here this evening. I will now ask my colleagues if they have any questions, comments over item D2. Once again, just to recap, as was mentioned by Jeanette and how the community came together, Centennial Park has been named for about 5 years now. And it's been a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years, that we introduced this all-inclusive park, or as Mr. Scarborough had mentioned, a park that was meant for children with special needs. And I will tell you that we have some of the most beautiful parks here in the city of Madera, and they're used all the time. But this particular park is used by so many children, and the parents just love to sit around the outside and watch the children play. I just know in my heart that this is a park that young Thaddeus and many children just like him would enjoy playing. So if we move forward with this, this will be a forever reminder of young Thaddeus and children just like him, that this park was built and meant and now dedicated to him. So if there's no further discussion, I don't believe we have any public comment. So I will bring it to council for action on item B2, the dedication of the playground at Centennial Park in honor of Thaddeus Strong.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Garcia and council, seconded by Councilman Rodriguez. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries unanimously with Councilman Hawley being absent. And just for clarification, Jeanette, when you had talked to, you said you called the city council and you talked to Mr. Rodriguez. I just want to give credit to our city manager, Arnoldo Rodriguez. There's a few Rodriguez's on the screen in front of me right now, you being one of them.
Arnoldo Rodriguez, yes.
He it was very, very supportive of this project, and he took calls, and we did have discussions either early in the morning or late at night. So I want to thank him as well.
Yes, absolutely.
We've also been in contact with the Strong family, and they're very supportive of this as well. And we just want to thank you again. We're inspired by the community, the people here in Madera, the Warriors for Christ and Justice for Thaddeus. This will live on in perpetuity. So we'll continue to have discussions, and we'll move forward with that plaque and a dedication down the road. But this was the first step. Congratulations to all of you, to the community, and again, a heartfelt thank you to my colleagues in the City Council for bringing this here this evening and voting unanimously to move forward. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Moving on to item D3, this is the sale of a manufactured unit located at 1218 East Cleveland Avenue, space number 4. This would be approval of a minute order accepting a purchase offer in the amount of $32,000 for a manufactured unit currently located at 1218 East Cleveland Avenue, space number 4. Ms. Yarete, I believe you will take this one.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Let me begin by sharing my screen. And I believe I'm good. Yes?
It's not full screen, but yes, we can see item D3.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I bring this item before you as a late distribution item because I think it is of interest for city to act quickly in order to take advantage of an opportunity. I also brought this item before you during the July 1st meeting. I'm bringing it with an update and a different request. Background on the item, this is in regards to a manufactured unit that was owned by Mr. and Mrs. Minjares. They obtained a loan from the city. It was a Calhome loan. In the amount of $55,000, and they used it to purchase a manufactured unit that would be placed at 1218 East Cleveland Avenue, space number 2. It is still located at this space, which is the Meadows Mobile Home Park. It is a senior mobile home park, and they took advantage of this loan as it provides deferred payments with no interest for 30 years. And their intent was to live there for to live out their lives, but they ran into some issues in 2018, 2019. and they weren't paying their rent at the manufactured at the mobile home park. So in May 2019, the city was notified that the tenants were in default with the Meadows, and if due to failure to pay the rent, that the Meadows was going to sell the unit to recover the lost rent. City requested that the sale be postponed and repossess the unit instead. Chronology of the course of events. In February of 2020, staff listed the unit in the amount of $35,000. And a few months later, in May 2020, the city received a cash offer for $25,000. However, this cash offer did not materialize as the buyer elected not to purchase the unit. The realtor assisting the city with this transaction assured us that we would be receiving another offer as there was a lot of interest at the time, and surely enough, a new offer in the amount of $32,000 came through on August 14th, 2020. So staff is recommending that City Council accept the $32,000 offer. It is another cash offer, so the buyer is ready to purchase. The sale proceeds will be used to pay for administrative costs that have already been incurred, including rent owed to the Meadows and the realtor commission, etc. And ultimately, any remaining proceeds will be put back into the program income account for future projects. I will answer any questions that council may have regarding this recommendation.
Thank you very much, Yvette. Any questions from council on this item? See none. I'll ask our city clerk if there's any public comment on item D3.
None received, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Seeing none, hearing none, if there's no further comments or questions, I'll bring it to council for action.
Mayor, move to approve item D3 is presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Montes and seconded by Councilman Robinson to approve item D3 as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? I'm sorry, did I hear a nay? No, maybe that was just me. That item has been approved unanimously, 6-0, with Councilman Hawley being absent. Thank you all very, very much for that, and I will be happy to get that one off the books and move forward. It's been a long time coming. Moving on to administrative reports. Item E1, this is discussion on the status and action taken on measures to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I don't want to go into great detail in terms of the numbers and where exactly the city stands, considering that Public Health Director Sarah Boss covered that in the first part of our council meeting this evening. However, this is simply to remind both council and the community of some of the city's efforts. Public facilities here at the city continue to be closed to the public. However, that does not imply that the city is closed for business. Rather, we are still open for business. If the community emails us, we will respond. If you call us, we will return your phone call. We continue to provide building inspections. Our building department and our planning department is still open. We are still responding to all calls. Both our fire department and our police department have not experienced any lower levels of services. Our water continues to be clean. So if community members turn on your faucet, there is zero concern about any form of contamination. I know early on in the process there was some concern about that, and there were some social media picking it up, but we have not experienced any absolutely zero concerns for our drinking water. And at the same time, our wastewater plant continues to operate, and we've had zero disruptions with that. I understand that we've have some potential disruptions due to power outages. However, that's not necessarily COVID related, rather that's heat related. So with that being said, I simply want to implore the community to please temper expectations just a tad bit right now, just because, again, we're learning as we're going, just like the community is. We understand there's a lot of anxiety in the community, However, at the same time, we continue to be open. We are not shutting off utilities for non-payment. We understand that there's a lot of people that are currently unemployed, or they are working less hours than they have historically. Today was the first day back in school for Madera Unified School District, so that's some added anxiety. But again, the city's here to assist our community. So if there's anything that we can improve on, or if there's something that we should be doing that we're not doing, I would ask that the community reach out to the department head, including myself, and to please keep us honest, because at the end of the day, we're here to serve the community. So thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for that update. And I'd like to thank you and the team and Joseph Carrello as well, reaching out to the community using social media and other means necessary to share in things like the cooling centers that we have here in the city of Madera, and staying safe and things like that. Just right now, as you had mentioned, Mr. Rodriguez, information and education is key. So just wanted to thank you for that. And same thing with your open door policy, you personally in City Hall, to take any questions whatsoever, whether it's in finance, economic development, deferred payments, whatever it is. I know you're fielding quite a few calls, so thank you and the team for that. Any questions from council regarding Mr. Rodriguez's report? Look at there, short, sweet, concise, and no questions. You gotta love it. Gotta love it. Moving on to council member reports. This portion of the meeting is reserved for the mayor and council members to make brief reports on boards, committees, and other public agencies at public events. Also to request updates, to initiate future agenda items, and to take action on matters initiated under this section of the agenda. Under this section, the council may take action only on items specifically agendized and which meet other requirements for action. That being said, I will ask Councilman Robinson for his report.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Gallegos.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Garcia.
We have, through the CDBG process and good graces of HUD and the federal government, received some funds for small businesses that are being distributed through the Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Business Association. We will be making some PSAs regarding that to make sure that people or businesses are applying to that. That's also going to be done at the county level. Out, so to make sure that that people are applying for these much needed funds. I also like to remind folks that the Census 2020 is down the home stretch. The last applications or last declarations to fill out the census for 2020 will be done at the end of September. So please remind your friends and family that if they have not filled out the census, they can do it on the internet or by phone. It's very important that we all contribute our 10 minutes to be able to fill that out. It's very important for our community to get what we are due, not any more, not any less, but what we are due as far as being residents of this great country. So please, if you haven't done so, fill out your census before the end of September. And also make sure that children and pets are protected as much as possible. We have extreme heat. We need to stay hydrated. And we make sure that if you can stay indoors, and that you do so. I understand that since I retired from the post office, I've had to be outside in the heat. I had to be out there doing the job. But believe me, this weather is atrocious, and you need to take care of yourself, because that plus COVID can put a dent in your armor. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilman Rodriguez.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Councilman Montes.
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And of course, normally I would call on Councilman Hawley. He's not here with us this evening, and he's with family. And as Councilman Robinson said early on, he's still grieving, but he also knows, I talked to him today, and he also knows, and he feels the love and prayers from the council, the city in general, all of our employees, and he wants to extend his heartfelt thank you to everybody for their love and support and reaching out to him. I have nothing. So with that, actually one more thing, as I see Chief Watson, the air quality was mentioned before, is absolutely horrible. But our firefighters and our personnel, I can tell you that if there's no fires in Madera, that does not mean that they are not working. And CAL FIRE is spread very, very thin right now. So just a prayer to all the men and women at CAL FIRE to keep them safe and return them home. And with that, the Ministerial Association tomorrow morning will be praying for our police department and our sheriff's department, just to show appreciation. And down the road, they will also include CAL FIRE, the Highway Patrol, also our ambulance service, Pistaresi Ambulance, and others. So we want to thank the Ministerial Association for that. That's all I have. We're going to move into closed session. Thank you very much, everybody, for being with us this evening and for your patience. And I will now ask Ms. Montoy for an announcement for closed session.
Thank you, Mayor. There are quite a few items on the agenda. G4 was taken off the calendar. The others remain. G1 is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation under Government Code 54956.9 D2 and relates to workers' compensation claim of Juan Mondragon. 2, public employees performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, title City Clerk. 3, conference with real property negotiators under Government Code Section 54956.8. Property is one parcel. City of Madera, APN 035080026. Negotiators Keith Helmuth. Negotiating party Jason Sanders under negotiation, price and terms. And 2 others under that same Government Code section on real property negotiations. Number 5, property, one parcel, APN 007101011. Negotiator Arnoldo Rodriguez, negotiating party Susan Savage under negotiation, price and terms. And finally, one parcel, APN 012054014, negotiator Arnoldo Rodriguez, negotiating party County of Madera under negotiation, price and terms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Montoy. We appreciate that. And again, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. We will now retire to closed session. Have a good evening. we've returned from closed session, and I'll ask our city attorney for an announcement.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one item to report on, and that's the item concerning the workers' comp claim by Juan Mondragon. Council approved a stipulated award for $6,960 by a vote of 0 with Councilmember Holly absent.
Great.
Thank
That concludes this evening's meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a safe rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.